Hello dear students, my name is Vikram Nalode. I am from Department of Mechanical Engineering. I work at SATCOE Yadrao Italkanji. In today's lecture of automobile engineering, we will focus on the transmission system, that is unit number 3, in which we will cover its principle, requirements, the types and the components of the transmission system. So let's discuss about the principle of the transmission system. Before discussing the principle, let's discuss various components of an automobile. Here, this is the engine. Engine is the source of the power. The power is developed inside the engine in internal combustion engine cylinders after combustion of the fuel. That is sufficient to develop the power. This power via crankshaft is transmitted to the transmission system through the clutches. Clutches are the intermediate part in between engine and the transmission system, which plays very important role to engage and disengage in between these two. Further, this is the transmission system. Transmission system consists of the gearboxes, which develops various speed ratios, which is helpful to transmit the power developed in the engine and transmitted to the various parts of an automobile. Further, transmission system is connected with the driving shaft, that is also called the propeller shaft. Now, this propeller shaft is connected with the transmission system with the help of the universal joint. Further, again it is connected with the next part, that is the differential, with the help of the universal joint. So, this propeller shaft is to transmit the power received from the engine and transmission system and delivers it to the differential gearbox. Differential gearbox is mounted on the rear axle. Differential gearbox just converts this motion, linear motion, into the perpendicular one. How this power is transmitted to the rear axle? For that, this differential gearbox is very essential. This is how engine transmits the power through the clutches, through the transmission system, then driving shaft or propeller shaft to the differential, and this is transmitted to the rear wheels. So let's discuss about the transmission system principle. In the case of transmission system, generally a machine consists of a power source and a power transmission system which provides controlled application of the power. So here the mechanism of the transmit the power developed by the engine of an automobile to the driving wheel, which is called transmission system or the power train. So in order to propel the vehicle, a particular speed and power changing device required to the transfer the power developed by engine to the driving wheel due to a constant changing requirements, and these devices are called the transmission system. Now we will discuss about the requirements of the transmission system. So there are many more points we will discuss here. In the case of the transmission system, it is to provide means of connections and disconnections of the engine with rest of powertrain without shock, and it should run very smoothly. So first requirement, it should be free from the shocks and the operation should be completely smoothly. Then it is to provide a variation in leverage between engine and the driving wheel. Then it is to provide means to transfer power in the opposite direction. This is the requirement from the transmission system. Then it is to enable power transmission at variation in the angles and variation in the lengths. Then it is to enable speed reduction between engine and the driving wheels at the ratio of 5:1. Then it is to enable diversion of power flow at right angles. Then it is to provide means to drive the driving wheels at different speeds when it is required. And the last requirement, it is to bear the effect of torque reaction, driving thrust and braking effort effectively. Now here are the types of transmission system: manual transmission, fully automatic, semi automatic and continuously variable transmission system. Now let's discuss about important major components of the transmission system one by one that we have discussed in previous slides. So here it is the clutch. This is the intermediate part in between engine and the transmission system. Gearbox inside the transmission system. Gearbox. Propeller shaft. This is the propeller shaft. And then differential. We discuss how this is connected with the transmission system via the propeller shaft and the live axle. So all these parts we will discuss one by one. So let's discuss about the clutch system. As we have discussed, this is the intermediate part of engine and transmission system. Clutch is very important part. Clutch is a mechanism that enables the transmission of rotary motion from the driving shaft to the driven shaft without slipping. In manual transmission system of an automobile, the power from the engine crankshaft to drive wheels through a clutch which is located between engine and gearbox. So the clutch couples and uncouples the transmission and the engine. When starting the engine, the clutch disconnects the engine crankshaft and the gearbox. So as it is mentioned, these components enable the engine to keep the disconnected from the road wheels. Rotary motion at the crankshaft is not transferred to the road wheels. It allows the transfer of the motion when desired by the driver driver of the automobile. Clutch also allows the transfer of motion gradually so that vehicle starts moving gradually. It works on the principle of friction. There are different types of clutches also that we will cover one by one. The next component of an automobile of the transmission system, that is the gearbox. This is a very important part of the automobile. So here, as we have discussed in the previous slide, this transmission system in which it consists of the gearboxes. A gearbox is necessary to regulate both power input and the speed range of the engine relative to the vehicle speeds. The engine, actually the need of the gearbox unit in an automobile is due to the characteristics and some points we will discuss, like IC engine operates over a range of 600 to about 6000 revolution per minute, whereas the car's wheels rotate between 0 to around 1800 revolution per minute. Then the engine provides its highest torque and power outputs unevenly across the revolution changes of the range, resulting in a torque band and power band. Then the dynamics of a car vary with the speed. When moving at low speeds, the acceleration is limited by inertia of the vehicular gross mass. The wind resistance becomes the dominant barrier when the vehicle is at cruising or maximum speeds. So, it is consisting of the some pairs of gear wheels. These transmit the motion available from the crankshaft through the clutch at different speed. It provides required leverage between the engine and road wheels. This leverage is variable to cope up the different conditions encountered during the movement of the vehicle. In next slide, we will discuss the propeller shaft. Now, propeller shaft is very important in terms of transmission of power from the transmission system to the differential gearbox to the differential gearbox. As we have discussed the part or the component in between transmission system and differential, here is the propeller shaft. Propeller shaft is a unit of automobile transmission system that connects the gearbox output shaft to input shaft of the differential at the rear wheel axle. So this is the rear axle over which the differential is connected to which it transmits the motion. Apparently the propeller shaft transmits the power from the engine, then clutch and gearbox to driving wheels of the vehicle through final drive and differential unit. Propeller shaft has to perform two functions also other than this discussed. It is to transmit motion at an angle which is varying frequently and to accommodate changes in length between the gearbox and the rear axle. So as it is mentioned, the third component, third means after clutches transmission system, propeller shaft is the third. It is the third component of the automobile transmission system which transfer motion from gearbox end to the differential end. This differential end and the gearbox end. The distance between the two can be larger, and therefore it is a shaft which is thinner and longer to connect the two components, like propeller shaft connects the differential gearbox and transmission system or the gearbox. So it is connecting the two. Next component we will discuss is differential. As we have discussed about differential gearbox, it plays a very important role. We will discuss its function. So here in this picture you just observe, this is the differential gearbox on the rear axle shaft that is connected with the propeller shaft. So what things are mentioned about differential: the inner and outer wheel of the moving vehicle do not always rotate at the same speed because of the road conditions, and especially when the vehicle has to take a turn. At that time the inner and outer wheels move along curved path. So here what things are mentioned: One of the requirement of the transmission system is to turn motion through the 90 degrees, as the axis of propeller shaft and the live axles are at right angles to each other. So you observe the propeller shaft and the rear axle, these are perpendicular to each other. So the rotation of the propeller shaft, it gives power to the differential gearbox, and it drives the axle as well as the wheels in the perpendicular manner. So these are perpendicular to each other. This is performed by the differential through wheels and pinion arrangement. The another function performed by the differential is the variation in the speeds of inner and outer wheels when the vehicle is taking a turn. Now next component we will discuss, that is the live axle. So live axle, now I think we have idea about live axle from the previous slides discussed, how it functions and how it receives energy in the terms of the motion from the differential gearbox, from the propeller shaft, from transmission system through clutches, and from the engine. So let's discuss what things are mentioned in this slide. The axle where motion from the crankshaft of the engine is transferred, it is known as the live axle. The other axle takes up only the load. That's why these are called dead axle or simply normal axle. The motion is generally transferred to the rear axle, but it can be transferred to the front axle or the both axles. When motion is transferred to both the axle, then it will be called as four wheel drive. Right now in this picture the power is transmitted to the rear axle, so this is rear wheel drive. If in some cases the power is transmitted to the front axle, then it will be called as front wheel drive, and in some cases when powers are transmitted to the rear as well as front axles, then it becomes four wheel drive. Finally motion is transferred to the wheels at the two ends of the live axle. The wheels rotate, and friction between their surfaces and road surfaces makes possible the movement of the vehicle on the road. So in this video lecture we have discussed various components of an automobile engine, in the terms of the transmission system. I hope, I think that you understood various principles of the various components as well as its constructions and types and the requirements of the transmission system. Thank you so much.